So some of the common struggles that small business owners face is outgrowing their cash. So let's say it takes a little while to get paid, their receivables are growing, but they want to add a next location. That can be a major struggle. Another struggle that small business owners face is not having bench strength. They need to be interviewing more or on a consistent basis. Some owners, that's their main job is interviewing and always having bench strength so that they have plan B when needed. What else do you want me to say?
Oh, I mean, you gonna tell us a solution?
Well, I just did. Why don't you ask the questions? Do you have the list and then I can give you the answers? You want to do it interview fashion?
Yeah, you know what? All right, that's fine. Here, give me copy paste the list into the chat,
Yep.
and I'll make this work. And I'm gonna make sure that when you're talking, I'm gonna mute so then there's no background noise that gets
Okay.
there.
Should we stop the recording so you have it clean?
That's fine. I'll give the notes to my editors.
Okay, so there's 1 through 18. It only does so many at a time, I've learned.
Yeah, that's true.
And here's the second batch.
Okay. All right. So yeah. All right. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Here we go, straight into it. So, Chris, you're a very experienced coach. Why don't you tell us about the common struggles that small business owners face?
Small business owners face a ton of challenges. It depends on their environment, what's going on at the time. But right now, what we're seeing is a lot of the owners are outgrowing their cash. So perhaps their receivables are starting to pile up, but they're ready to open a next location, but they're waiting 90 days to get paid. So that can be a problem. And those kinds of things get discussed at our meetings. Another struggle that we see or challenge that we see is not having bench strength. So a lot of employees are calling out or um, not performing at their best performance. And it's because our owners don't always have bench strength. So then we get them interviewing. And if Charlie calls out and says, "Hey, it's Friday, I can't make it today," you can then say, "Charlie, no problem. Sam's been dying to get some time. We'll give him your time slot." And then all of a sudden, Charlie won't call out as often. It's also nice to have employees compete for time slots and compete to just shine and be the best employees that they can for our owners. So that is a strategy.
There you go. Number one completed. That's simple, genuine, straight to the point. All right.
I don't love the answer. I sound like a bit of an ass, but yeah, that's just, that's part of it.
Listen, you're being real. That's how people are going to know you. You're just the guy who's no BS. So that's
Yeah.
exactly the type of vibe that we're going to give. I'm Chris Lipper, and I don't give a flying fuck. I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and that's exactly how it's going to be. I'm Chris. I'm experienced. I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I don't mess around. All
Okay.
right. So, Chris, you are the founder of On the Bus. So, tell us, how the hell does it work?
So I never wanted On the Bus to be a guru-based company. I don't want to take credit for our members' success, and I certainly don't want to take the blame if they don't succeed. Fortunately, our members are all having record years year after year, so I don't have to worry about the latter. But the way our meetings work is they're mastermind groups. Our owners get one-to-one coaching prior to the meeting. They know what challenge they want to present. They present it to their group, their bus, which is their mastermind group. And we have different buses for different size companies. Solopreneurs are on bus 102, owners of different size are on bus 101, and so on. Um, but you present the challenge to the group. You then get to ask questions and give short answers, and then feedback is given. And there's no debating. They're muted. It's virtual. It's easy to mute someone. And then at the end, you ask them for a commitment, what they're going to do by the next month's meeting. And I find this works so much better than one-to-one coaching. So that's how we do it.
There you go. That's number two completed. All right. Number three. Well, Chris, I mean, On the Bus seems like it's the real deal. I mean, you must have a lot of clients. So, Why don't you tell us about a time that you took a client and took them from zero to successful?
So success stories we're fortunate that we get to see all the time. And what we start with is a vision, right? So we go out when we sit down, let me start over. So success stories we see all the time. It's one of the benefits of doing this, and it's the energy that we get to thrive on. I'll give you a couple of examples, but many owners, when they come to me, come rudderless. They come without a vision, and they're kind of going with the company where their clients want them to go, and then they get upset that the company isn't where they want it to be, but they never knew where they wanted it to be. They just know it's not where they're at. So we start with a vision and work it backwards. And many times the vision is to sell the business. 45 of our owners have sold their businesses since we started in 2008. And that's while they were members. Many more have sold after they left us. Um, so we start with the vision and work it backwards. Some of the successes we've seen are one woman came to me 8 years ago, and 8 years is our average stay. And she couldn't afford to join. And I said, "What's it costing you to not be on the bus?" And she couldn't afford it. That was on a Thursday. That Monday, she called me up saying that she had borrowed money to join. Now she profits between 60 and 1 month, $180,000 a month. Um, and 8 years ago, she couldn't afford to join. Somebody else came to me in recent years, 3 years ago. He was a franchise owner, but didn't get along with the franchisor. So we taught him how to leave the franchise, open up his own business, and now he has two locations doing $3 million a year, which is kind of nice. Now he's planning on selling. So those are some successes that come to mind. And that might have been over a minute, but you guys can edit it. I'm not hearing you if you're saying anything.
All right. All right. Well, you know what? That was pretty good to me. Oh, can you hear me now?
Mhm. Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, that was a good one too. All right, next one. So, most common challenges when scaling. So, Chris, I mean, we already talked about common challenges that a small business owner faces. So, tell me about the common challenges that business owners face when they're trying to scale.
So when you're trying to grow a business, well, there was a lot of noise there. Let me try that again. So when you're trying to grow a business, and we need to know what the exit is, what the point is of growing. If we're trying to grow it so we can sell it, we got to remember that the less of you, the business owner, the more the company is worth. So we want to implement systems. So that's part of what we're going to sell are the systems, right? That we're going to have in place so the company can run without you, the owner. So that's a strategy is to always be implementing systems that work. So you're managing systems versus people. Um, let's start with that.
All right, I like that. All right, now we're wasting no time here. Next one. So, your trade shows. Chris, I heard they're pretty darn famous around these parts, right? So tell me how your trade shows work and tell me about someone who got some major success from, attending or even having their own booth at your trade show.
So in 2014, one of my members said, "Trade shows suck. I'm never doing another one." And I said, "Trade shows don't suck. You suck at doing them, and I'll prove it to you. And we're going to have a trade show." And we used our sales training to get people ready for trade shows. So back then we were doing them live. And at a typical trade show, you get a 10 by 10 booth with a table, two chairs, and a garbage can, right? If you're lucky. So the first thing we did was we got all the chairs out of the show. You're not there to sit, you're there to work. It's a trade show. And we put the tables in the back of the booth, not the front. So there was no barrier between the people walking by and the people in the booth and had them stand outside the booth and not facing each other, but facing out and greeting people and saying, "Hey, how are you? How's the show going for you? Anything interesting out there?" That kind of stuff, as opposed to two guys sitting behind a desk with their feet up saying, "Oh, this trade show's no good." So we taught them how to get more out of trade shows and how to invite people to trade shows so that they come. We tend to see about a 1% success rate. So if you want 10 people to come, you got to invite 1,000 people. Then when the pandemic happened, we had to figure out how to do this virtually. And we're about to have our 25th show. So we have found how to do this virtually. And I have some people that have booths that have been with me since we were live, since we did those first 8 shows, and they're still with us now. And many of the people that come to our shows have been to all 25. It's a lot of fun. Business gets done. I recommend it. Come on the bus.biz, register there.
All right. I like that. There you go. See, you gave a lot of valuable stuff there. All right. So, Chris, your program's pretty amazing, isn't it? So apparently you have someone in your program that was so darn successful, it sounds too good to be true. Apparently she was too poor to even afford your services, and now she's making over $100,000 a month. Please elaborate.
We already went over that one.
Let's get that one. That's fine. All right. So you have this on the bus program, right? It's pretty darn successful, and you're pretty much living the dream in California, right? So what was life like for you before on the bus? And then how did on the bus change your life?
Let me digest that for a second. I'm going to tweak this a little bit. So I recently published this book, The Entrepreneur's Big Book, featuring the 12 steps of entrepreneurship. And 11 owners that have been through our program share their stories in the book. And they talk about what life was like before getting on the bus, what changes they made when they got on the bus, and what life and business are like now. And it's totally motivational. It's great to read. I enjoy listening to it on Audible, but the stories are fascinating. It's not necessarily rags to riches, but it's confused and stuck to successful and not stuck. That's typical of what we see. We had a meeting this morning. We had a bus meeting this morning, and I had to remind people that the problems they have now are luxury problems. They would love to have had these problems when they had started the business. They would have never thought these kind of problems or challenges were possible, and now they're complaining about it. And I was like, all right, let's take a pause here for a second and realize that we're complaining about having too much business. So let's figure out how to handle the business or prioritize it and not be so upset with ourselves for having too much business.
Well, there you go. That was a really good one. All right. That was genius. All right. Wasting no time. Next one. So, Chris, a lot of coaches out there, right? So, how does somebody differentiate between a coach that actually knows what the hell they're doing and somebody who just lost their job and they just want to pretend they're a coach and get your money?
Right. I feel like there's a ton of coaches out there. There's a lot of photographers. There's a lot of videographers out there. I feel like anybody who's lost a job and has an iPhone becomes a photographer, or they become a videographer, and it waters down that industry, and they're racing to the bottom on price. Well, the same thing's happening in the coaching industry. That you find a lot of people that were, let's say, a VP of sales or a VP of finance or a CFO, and all of a sudden they think they can coach entrepreneurs. Only entrepreneurs get entrepreneurs. We're a different breed of people. We take risks, we take chances. We're willing to work for half the amount and twice as hard so that we don't have to ask permission to run with an idea. So we're just a different breed. And I don't think some experts can really coach entrepreneurs. So make sure that whoever you go to for coaching has lived the dream before. They don't even have to have been successful at it, but at least they will understand you. And the way we do it by a mastermind group, you're really not being coached by a coach. You're more a part of a community that is helping to mold you together. And the nice thing is, they don't want anything. They're not looking for anything. They don't feel um, that anything's on the line if you do or don't do it, but you will do what you say because you won't want to let the group down. It's amazing to see how it works.
Beautifully done. Love it. All right. Next one. So, Chris, someone's finally got the coach that they're looking for. Now, the question is, How does the client make sure that they're getting their money's worth from a coaching session?
The key to a successful coaching session, I think, first of all, starts with the owner being honest, um, and not believing his own BS, and being able to present the challenge or the opportunity, or just have an honest conversation as to what's really going on. So maybe looking at some numbers, some KPIs, some behaviors ahead of time, knowing that you're not as good or bad as your last phone call. But be honest with your coach. I don't know why people lie to their doctors. I don't know why somebody would lie to their coach. It's the same kind of thing. The coach is there to help. If you want to know how you're doing, health wise, you don't look at weight loss or weight gain, right? You look at how your clothes fit, right? And how your blood work is, that kind of stuff. Well, it's same thing with business. It's not always strictly revenue. It's not pinpointing a certain number, because if you come a little below or a little over, that's not the metric that matters. It's the behaviors, and show that they're working with the KPIs, but it's tracking the behaviors, especially once a company becomes successful. Good can become the enemy of great, right? That we don't want to stop it there. Let me start again. Ask that question again.
All right. Well, all right. Redo. Editors, if you're listening to this, when you get the recording, don't take that first take. Let me try again. All right. So, Chris, there's someone they finally got the coaches they're looking for, right? So, how does a client make sure that they get their money's worth out of a coaching session?
So, how do you put value on a coaching session? Well, a lot of that, 50% of it has to do with the client, and the other 50% has to do with the coach, right? So, first of all, the client needs to come prepared for the meeting. So, maybe know their numbers, have shared their numbers with the coach, so the coach knows what's going on ahead of time. We want to be efficient in our meetings, and I think that gives the coach a fighting chance. Not all coaches are great. It's not just somebody who was a CFO at a company and lost their job and now they're coaching entrepreneurs. That makes no sense. They were never were an entrepreneur. How are they going to know to coach us? We're a different breed of people. Entrepreneurs are willing to work for half the price, twice the hours, just so we don't have to ask permission to run with an idea. It's just part of our makeup. That's living the entrepreneurial dream sometimes. In the end, it works out, but in the beginning, eh, it's questionable, let's say. Why are we working so hard and not making what we used to make as an employee? Um, but be honest with your coach. Give the coach a chance. Don't lie to your doctors. Don't lie to your coach.
All right. Love it. Making good progress here.
And they
All
can edit
right.
this however they want. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give them the notes and stuff. But yeah, so far, I mean, this recording starts going go. I mean, you got some good stuff here.
Okay.
All right. Next one. So, Chris, I know there's people go to coaching sessions, but there's also mastermind groups people attend. Tell people out there, what the heck is the difference between a coaching session and a mastermind group?
Great question. So, mastermind groups for me are the way to coach entrepreneurs. I've had coaches and I've been a member of mastermind groups. So, a coach, when an entrepreneur goes to a coach, especially if they were a tech expert, they're going to sit there and just wag their finger at you, telling you what you should or shouldn't do. And they have somewhat of an agenda, and that's to keep you as a client. Mastermind groups are completely different. So, in our groups, we have between 5 and 8 owners in a group. If you're a member of one of our buses, as we call them, the other owners have no agenda. They're not trying to keep you. They're not trying to do anything other than help you, right? It's just a different process. There's an accountability that if you tell the group you're going to do something by next month's meeting and they're not on your payroll, but if you tell them, I'm going to do 3 interviews, or I'm going to fire this person, or we're going to install cameras, or whatever it is that they're going to do by next month's meeting, it gets done. I remember when I was in a mastermind group, some nights I was up to 4 or 5 in the morning before my 8 a.m. meeting, getting done what I said I was going to do, because it was that important to me to get done. And that's what we see in our groups. And there's some great groups out there. Obviously, I recommend On the Bus. I think we're the best at what we do because of the formula we have and the mix we have between sales training, networking, the metaverse trade shows, and of course the mastermind groups. But there's other groups like Vistage and Tab um, that you might want to check out as well.
There we go. An honest response there. I like it. All right. I like it. All right. Next one. So, Chris, someone goes to a coach. How do clients make sure, or how can clients figure out for themselves if they're actually a coachable person or if they're just some fucking blowhard?
Not all entrepreneurs are coachable. I found this before. I remember one guy came to me in my office. It was late in the day, 5 o'clock. People were starting to leave, and he was a big guy. And let's start over because I touched my glasses. All right. So not all entrepreneurs are coachable. And I remember one guy came to my office. It was late in the day. It was 5 o'clock. People were starting to leave the office. And I had him in my office, and he's going on and on for a bit. And I said, I don't think you're a fit for us. And he goes, why would you say that? I thought you wanted my business. I said, well, I'm worried about the chemistry of our groups. And I think you're, no offense, a little bit of a blowhard that you want to let us all know how smart you are. And you're not open and vulnerable and coming in with a challenge saying, I don't know what to do in a situation, as opposed to you just wanting to tell everyone else what to do. And he stood up and he put his hand back like near his pocket. I didn't know what he was going to do. And he pulled out his checkbook and he said, no one's ever said that to me before. And you're right. Find me a group now. And I did. And I was right. And he was not a fit for us because he really just wanted to tell everyone how smart he was. But that's part of my job is making chemistry in our groups. And we have formulas and ways of doing that. But if an owner is really there just to tell everyone how smart they are, they're not a fit for us. We want owners that can be vulnerable and honest and say, I don't know what to do in this situation. What have you guys done? What worked? What didn't work? Help me. That's what we want.
Honest and true to the point. Love it, love it, love it. All right. So, next one. There are no overnight successes. So, Chris, how do you let your clients know to set their expectations to be more realistic and not expect instantaneous success?
So there are no overnight successes, right? I learned that when I was inventing. Sure, you might get some big wins, but it's all the work that it took before that that nobody sees, right? It's the idea, and it may not be your first idea. It could have been your 10,000th idea, but nobody sees those and nobody counts those, and they just think, oh yeah, he's an overnight success. I don't know any overnight successes. I know people that have worked very hard to get to where they are, and they work very hard to stay where they are. And that's part of what we do is we, we don't let good become the enemy of great, right? We keep people on track.
Well, I like that. That's pretty inspirational right there. All right. So, next one, where you get your motivation. So, Chris, I mean, here you are, successful entrepreneur on the bus. People love and respect you all over the country, right? Now, what motivates you though to do what the heck you do, right? Because there's a lot of people out there who just try to, push themselves. They burn out, 'cause it's a long journey. How do you keep yourself going?
How do I keep myself going? Oh my God, I get so much energy from our entrepreneurs, from our owners, our groups. We had a bus meeting this morning. I'm charged all day. I'll probably be charged tomorrow still from that. Our owners are electric. They're on fire. Entrepreneurs are a different breed of people. It's hard not to be motivated when you spend time with them. So, Rohan, I think we need to change that question to how do you keep entrepreneurs motivated? Can we try that one?
Yeah, sure. You know what? I think that's a good idea too. Okay, so editors, if you're listening to that, ignore that last take.
Oh,
This
they
one.
don't have to ignore it. They might use that also, but let's try this one too, right? It's just a different question. We'll add a question if that's fair.
All right, we're adding a question then. Okay, so then editors do actually use that one actually. That previous one. Do not cut that one out actually. Okay, so we're adding a new one here. So, Chris, you get a bunch of entrepreneurs. They come in, they want to throw their money at you, right? So, you get them in for the first month, but how do you make sure that they stay motivated so that they can keep throwing money at you?
Entrepreneur, I mean, we all have different ways of staying motivated. Sometimes it's, I'll show you I can do it. Other times it could be fear. Other times it could be ego stroking. Yeah, we all need to find our motivators. So the motivation that works for me that I enjoy is Sunday nights on the History Channel. They have these wonderful stories of these mega successful entrepreneurs like Heinz or Ford or CW Post, all these different brands that we know today. But to hear the early stories, man, is that exciting and motivating. I love hearing that. That's the energy I want to be around. And I want to hear how when somebody was down and out and being arrested for not making payroll and they turn it into this mega conglomerate company that's been bought and sold 6 times since then. It's amazing to hear. So that's part of my motivation. There's also still the I'll show you part. That works for me too.
Oh gosh darn, that ain't that something, folks. All right, so next one. All right, so this is an interesting one. How to not outgroup your revenue. All right. Well, Chris, I mean, you're the expert here. You got people of different challenges. So how do you make sure that, you know, people don't well, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but how to not outgroup the revenue? I mean, teach us, tell us.
Okay. So one of the challenges that we see often is entrepreneurs outgrowing their revenue. Um, so we have to take a look at that. So we have a story. Let me start over. So one of the questions that comes a lot is outgrowing our revenue. So how do we prevent outgrowing our revenue? So we got to look at where the revenue is going. So sometimes we get jammed up in receivables. So a good number would be 28 days, 27 days, something like that. An average we found with our members was 38 days. So some were at 60 and 90 days and they wanted to grow. They wanted to open next locations, buy machinery, whatever it might be, and they couldn't do that. I remember one owner was giving, when we were meeting live before we went virtual, was giving a tour of the office, and there was a stack of papers on his desk, and there was a receptionist that he wasn't sure he wanted to keep. And we weren't sure why he had a receptionist to begin with. It wasn't a business for the public, it was more a service industry. And one of the people on the tour said, "Hey, what's that stack on your desk?" And he goes, "Oh, those are all the outstanding invoices." And we said, "So what's your batting average when you call? How many do you get?" And he's like, I probably get 3 out of 10. And then someone in the group said, "Why don't you give it to her and see how she does?" So we tried that, and she was getting 7 or 8 out of 10. And the difference was when the owner was calling, he was trying to get his own money, right? When the employee was coming, the accounts receivable person was calling the accounts payable person, she could say, "Hey, I got to get my boss off my back. Can you help me out with this one?" And get our invoice to the top of the pile. And she was getting 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. We've had other owners once send a birthday card with an invoice that was like a year old. They were on a paid if paid basis with a big company, but to be cute, they sent a birthday card, and that got the attention of someone along the line, and they got paid. So staying on top of your receivables is huge. We had an owner recently that had like 80, $90,000 in receivables, and the owner of the company died and went under, and he got stuck with the receivables. That was a problem. Got out of it at the end, but we got to keep an eye on these things. Don't let the receivables creep up on you. You're lending money to them interest free. Let's not do that.
Well, an interesting story there, folks. Make sure you learn from him. He's the real deal here, Chris Lipper. Am I right? All right, next one. So, what do we got here? So, people here, the number one job of a small business owner. All right, so Chris, I mean, you got small business owners of different challenges, different locations, different circumstances, the whole 9 yards, right? But based on your past experience and what you've seen other business owners go through, what would you say is the number one job for all small business owners?
Number one job of a small business owner, interviewing. Always be interviewing all the time. You need bench strength. People are going to come and go. You don't want to get stuck. You don't want the employees to be able to tell you when they're working. You want to tell them when they're working. You don't want people calling out and not having the bench strength. You don't want to beg people to work, have bench strength. And the way you get that is by interviewing. And always when you interview and you find a winner, and that doesn't mean hiring. Interviewing is different than hiring. But get their personal email address in case they leave the current job and they were the winner that you wanted. And in 3 months, when you're ready for them, you have a way to reach them or their cell phone number. But make sure you have a way of reaching the people that you want on your team. Interviewing can take a lot of time. So here are a couple tricks. If you're putting something out on Craigslist or using one of the apps or one of the programs, and you're all of a sudden going to get hit with 300 resumes that you don't want to go through, put a line in the second to last paragraph that says something like, "We're only going to review resumes that have the word giraffe in the subject line." So now you're going to go from 300 resumes to three or 10 because they're going to put giraffe in the subject line, which means they read your full ad. And they weren't just blanketing and hitting, send, 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 and sending out resumes. So that's one approach. Another approach that I like a lot is the group interview. So if you're looking to hire tech support, let's say, bring in 10 people, find 10 candidates, interview them all at once. You can tell them about the company a little bit and take all that stuff out of the way, but throw a broken computer at them, at two or three of them, and say, fix this, and see how they work together and see who rises to the top. And maybe the top two or three people get individual interviews. So now you've interviewed 10 people in 4 hours versus 10 people an hour each. Yeah, it's just a better use of time. So if you can do it, do group interviews.
Well, there you go. Very, very insightful. All right, so that goes right into the next question. So, Chris, I'm sure you've dealt with entrepreneurs who have their own teams to get work done. So then all the work isn't just
Say it again.
floating
I
onto
couldn't
one
hear you.
person.
Say it again.
Oh, wait, all right. Can you hear me? You hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Chris, you've dealt with plenty of entrepreneurs, some who are solo and some who have a team. Let's talk about the ones who have a team. How do you make sure that these entrepreneurs who have a team are actually doing what they're supposed to do? How do you review a team and make sure that they're following what they have to do in a day, a week, a month, and a year?
So the way I coach owners and managers on managing people, let's say it's salespeople, it just tends to be an area that I get more involved with than others. I like it when the employees know if they had a good day or a bad day without someone having to tell them. I like it when they know if they had a good week or a good month or a good year without someone having to tell them. I like it where they can fire themselves if they need to, where we don't necessarily have to manage them. And the way we do that is by giving them behaviors. And I've broken it down before on index cards with weekly behaviors. So let's say you want 5 appointments a week, right? Or 5 meal lunches a week, or whatever it might be, or networking events, and not just are they going to networking events, but they're getting to one-to-ones when they go. They're asking for referrals. All that stuff are behaviors that can be checked off. So let's use networking events. So if we're suggesting, asking, telling our salespeople, look, we need you out there networking, find your groups, join your groups, and get at it. So they're going to tell us which events they go to, or they're planning on going to that week, what one-to-ones they had, and who they had them with. So we know who they met with, right? And they're going to write it on their index card. I guess today we could do it by some kind of Excel sheet or something like that, or some app. But that's how we can hold our employees accountable, and get them to manage themselves a little bit. Just a thought, something that I've seen work.
Ain't that fantastic, folks? All right, that was a good one. That was a good one. That was real insight. All right, so next one. Chris, you've talked to us about how your on the bus program works and how you have to bring on the right entrepreneur. You don't want someone who's just a freaking blowhard, right? Who's ruining it for everybody else. So, when you are going and you're selling your program to the people, how do you make sure that you fill your buses with the right people?
How do I make sure that we fill our buses with the right people? I guess it's just gut instinct. Uh, One way to do it is if they need to ask permission to join, they're not a fit. If they're a partner in a company, they're probably not going to be a fit. We've taken partners before, but the other partner tends to get upset because the one that's our member becomes too dominant and too strong. So, a good barometer one is if they need to ask permission to join, they're not a fit for us. They need to be able to make this decision on their own, have the budget to join. We use personality traits as well. So a disc is a favorite of mine. I know there's Myers-Briggs, there's a number of them out there. There's now Bank is very popular, but disc is one that tends to work well for me. We don't want a room full of D's. It'll be a very aggressive meeting. We don't want a room full of I's. It'll be very chatty, and I don't know if anything will get done. It'll be a wonderful meeting and a lot of fun, but not why we're there. We don't want a bunch of C's. It'll be a little dull, very analytical, memorable, but just, I don't know. What we want is a mix, right? So we look at the balance. We look at the industries. A nice way to start a group would be with a marketer, a lawyer, an accountant. That would be a great pillar to build on. It's a lot of free advice for the owners coming in, but that's part of how we develop the mix. But it really has to do with personalities, and we can't have competitors in the same group. In fact, if you know someone in one of our groups, you can't join. If your neighbor's there, there's no way you'd be on a bus with them. It's the advantage of having multiple buses.
Well, that's pretty smart. Oh, well done, Chris. Well done. All right, so next one. This one's a pretty important one. You get different entrepreneurs who are trying to get and achieve their dreams and goals, right?
Say it
So
again.
you have entrepreneurs under you who are working to go and achieve their goals, their hopes, their dreams, all of that stuff. So how do you make sure that these entrepreneurs are setting realistic goals and not blowing their expectations out of the water? Some crap.
I didn't hear all of the question, but I heard enough. So I'm a big believer in SMART goals. They should be strategic, measurable, obtainable, realistic is a big one, and trackable. So we'll start there. We can't start a business today and think we're going to be at $10 million at the end of the year. I had one owner once tell me when I asked him what his goal was, and it was to be on the cover of Time magazine. It's nice. I'm sure a lot of people would like that. I don't know if it's realistic. Let's discuss what we're going to do first. So I like to take bite-sized pieces to get to where they want to go, but I also want to make sure that our goals are realistic as to where we're going to go. And if I don't think it's realistic, but they do, let's have a conversation and figure out why. I have some, you know, uh, big, hairy, audacious goals of my own, that I think are realistic, and others may not. But I'm also not putting a date on it or a time frame, to get there. I have a ballpark. I'm giving myself 5 years, and I think that's the difference between a dream and a goal is putting a date on it. But if it takes 5 years and a month, I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
Honest and to the point. Good stuff. Love it. All right. So now, oh, this is a big one. Entrepreneurs managing their money. So you got a lot of entrepreneurs, they invest in different stuff, yada, yada, yada. And how do you make sure that these entrepreneurs are not spending their money irresponsibly?
Great question. And this comes up once in a while. And part of how people use our buses, and we used to call them boards, now we call them buses because we're on the bus. Um, when some of our owners are presented with an opportunity, let's say it's to join a group of some type, a association, or to buy a bigger piece of equipment, or whatever the next shiny object is, what they can now say is, let me run it by my board. Let me run it by my guys and just see what kind of feedback I get. And that way, they also have a way out where a month later, they might be like, yeah, I don't really want to do this. They can blame us and just say, yeah, my board voted it down. I'm sorry, I can't proceed with this. So that's a way of keeping some spending intact. Most big decisions get run by our bus members, and that's part of why they're on the bus.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right. I like that one too. Short and simple. Okay. Now, ooh, this one's another. Oh, the rest of these are pretty important. Okay. So, next one. Entrepreneurs, they have to get to point A to point B. Who is going to hold these entrepreneurs accountable as they work their way from point A to point B?
Yeah, think this one through a little bit. Good. So a lot of times entrepreneurs have some big goals, and we need to get from point A to point B, as has been described. So we offer twice a year a cookbooking session where we break down goals to behaviors. So let's say somebody's at $750,000 or $750 million, or we'll pick a number. We'll use round numbers. Let's say they're at $750,000 and they want to be at $100,000 next year. All right. Um, or at $1 million next year. Sorry. Let's start that over. So how do we get our owners to get from A to B? We have a way of doing it. It starts with making sure that B is realistic. And once we've established that we have a realistic goal in place, we offer cookbooking sessions twice a year where we establish behaviors to help our owners get to where they want to get to. So I'll give you an example. Let's say one of our small business owners ended their year at $750,000, and their goal for next year is $1 million. So we've got a $250,000 spread. So then we'll ask them what their average ticket is, their average sale. And I always get pushback on that. And they'll say, well, we don't have an average. We offer a range of products. Fine. But we need a number that we can divide into that 250,000. So let's think about it. What is your average sale? And let's say they come up with $25,000. Let's say they're a roofing company or something big like that, or an RV company. I don't know. But let's say it's $25,000. So we know we need 10 sales, assuming their business carries over year to year and they don't start the year at zero. So now we know we need 10 sales of $25,000 to hit the $1 million mark, based on what we know. So then the behaviors are, what does it take to get the 10 sales? So we look at success ratios, or so how many quotes does it take to get a yes? So if our batting average is 50%, 5 out of 10, and we need 10 orders, it sounds like it's 20 quotes. Why don't we go for 25 just to be sure? Um, so we're going to do what we need to do to get the quotes. So we'll look at that next. What are the behaviors to get to a quote? Is it advertising? Is it networking? Is it speaking events? Is it could be anything depending on your industry. Let's say it's networking. So fine. We will then commit to the number of networking events that the company will make, not just the owner, but it could be the salespeople, whatever it is, and we'll track the one-to-ones that they're getting. And we'll establish that if they go to 100 networking groups and have 200 one-to-ones, and at those one-to-ones, 100 people give them referrals that they've asked for, that at least 25 of those will turn into orders. We now have something we can track, behaviors we can track. Those numbers might not be dead on accurate, but you get the idea. And that's part of what we do every June and December with our owners.
Well, that was good. That was a really good one. Just a word of advice, though, keep the future answers a little bit shorter, but I like that one. We'll make that one work.
I can do it. You want me to do it again?
No, no, it's fine. That one's still good. I'm just saying, just for the future ones, just try to keep them a little bit shorter. That's all.
Okay.
Um, all right. So, Mr. Chris on the bus, you're so
You
darn.
sure you, oh, wait, you sure you don't want me to do that one again? I don't mind. It's an important one.
I mean, can you actually make it shorter while making sure it's good?
Yeah.
All right. Editors, we're gonna redo that one. All
All
right.
right, let
So
me
then,
just go. I'm revved up and ready. Ready?
all right. Here we go. I'll mute.
So how do we get our owners to move from A to B? Well, first we got to decide that B is realistic for our owners. So we got to make sure our goals are realistic that we're trying to get to. And then we'll establish the GPS to get there with behaviors. And the behaviors will track. So a quick example, let's say a small business owner ends their year at $750,000 and they want to be at $1 million next year, assuming they don't start their year at zero and they've got repeat business and we're going to do probably the same 750. How do we add $250,000? So what we'll do is look at their average ticket price. Let's assume it's $25,000 and they need 10 orders to round up to that $1 million level. So then we have to break it down and figure, all right, so what do we do to get 10 orders? What's our success ratio on quotes? Is it 50%? So then we need 20 quotes to get to 10 orders of $25,000 each, giving us the $250,000 additional, getting us to the million. So, what are the behaviors to get the 10 quotes? And that's where the fun part comes in. And it's all in these books. It's called cookbooking. We do it every June and December with our owners. Some of the behaviors can be networking better and smarter and tracking the one-to-ones and the referrals asked for. So again, using that scenario, maybe they go to a dozen networking events a month or 8 or 10, whatever the number is, but they're going to have at least two one-to-ones at each event. So let's use 10, that's 20 one-to-ones, and they're going to ask for the referrals at those one-to-ones. As they get the referrals, we're going to go for, what do we say? We needed 10 orders. Let's say our batting average was 50%, so we need 20 referrals to hit that number. Those are the things that we track and we hold our owners accountable to hitting their goals. It starts with their idea and then it becomes a cookbook accountability.
Yep, I like that one. Yeah, that one's good. All right. All right. So now, waste no time. We're making good progress on these. This is great timing. Okay. So next one. So Chris, successful entrepreneur, right? Chris Lipper, the one and only, right? Where do your leads come from? I mean, everybody wants to get business. What's your secret? How did you get your leads?
So my leads tend to come from referrals. And it's interesting. I asked one of our groups for referrals recently, and they said, no, we don't want you to get bigger, and we're willing to pay you more than having you grow, which I thought was interesting. I've never had clients offer to raise their rates. Um, but my leads tend to come from referrals. Just like a good doctor gets referrals, I guess a good coach or a good system gets referrals. Um, Recently, I got one through a speaking event. I was giving a talk, and all of a sudden, somebody wanted a one-to-one, which is part of why I do talks. And we should have a hook and a reason and a motive other than it just feels good. So, speaking events, asking for referrals, and just doing a good job for our members is how we get our clients.
Yeah, I like that one. Yep. Short, straight to the point, but very, very valuable. Okay. All right, next one. So, Chris, people have different services, in different industries, but they want to make money. So, how Are entrepreneurs or any sort of service provider supposed to price their services?
So pricing's a little bit like making warm water, right? A little hot, a little cold, you get your warm. And I think that instead of us establishing prices ahead of time, that maybe we ask our clients what their budget is and then we fine tune the service to the budget. That might be one way of doing it, or a better way than just saying, nope, my price is $2,000 a month and that's it. Maybe the client wants to spend more and they want more of a service, or maybe they just want half of the service, and that is an approach. Um, when I was inventing, you always had to start from the price backwards once you had the idea for a product. So let's say you want to retail at 20 bucks, 19.99. That means you really got to manufacture it for five, right? Because everybody's keystoning it along the way. So you make it for five. The wholesaler is then going to sell it for 10, or you're going to sell it to the retailer for 10, and they're going to double it again and sell it for 20. I think it's a matter of looking at how many steps you have along the way to the end user, but keystones for products seem to be the right number.
All right, good stuff. I like it. Okay, so next one. This one's pretty important too. Entrepreneur, they're getting some success, they're getting some clients. That's what everybody wants, paying clients. But once somebody gets a client, how do you manage them just so you make sure that you don't lose?
I didn't hear the end of the question. Make sure you don't what? Lose them?
Yeah, yeah.
So, so retention's everything, right? It's a lot of work to get a client. It's a lot of work to get the phone ring. But once we have a client, once we have a member, or once you have a customer, whatever term you want to use, I would ask how we're doing. So at the end of every one of our meetings, we turn on the record and we say, how was the meeting for you, 1 to 10? What was your aha moment and what could we do better? And we do this every time. I just had a new licensee join us this morning at a meeting and we did it then, and she got to see that firsthand. Ask your clients how you're doing. What could you do better? I think you'll keep them longer.
There you go, adding a personal touch to that. That really does help. I'll give you that. Okay. All right, the next one then. So, managing vendors. This might apply to certain industries and stuff, but with certain entrepreneurs, how do you make sure that they can manage their vendors effectively?
Managing vendors is never easy, right? For some owners, other owners enjoy managing their vendors, but I've seen all different kinds of ways of doing it. Um, One approach is talking to multiple vendors all the time. I have my favorite. So let's say web and SEO and all that kind of outreach stuff. I got my guy, right? But recently I wasn't so happy. And other people were pitching me on taking over that part of the business. I took the meetings and listened to them. And then I set up a meeting with him. And I kind of sent a text saying, hey, let's sit down and talk. He knew something was up, and all of a sudden, the things I wanted being done were getting done. So I think check-ins are important. And then I let him know that I had talked to some other guys, and here was what they were suggesting and what we could do better. And he agreed. And I might even go out and get some quotes and show it to him and see what we can do. But once I have a teammate, I'm going to stick with them, but I'm not going to go down the hole with them if things aren't happening the way I want them to happen either. But I really didn't want to rebuild the website again. It's a lot of work.
Well, there you have it. Some powerful stuff there. All right, look at that. Chris, we only have two more, and we're going to finish this well before our scheduled time. Okay, so Chris, someone's brand new to the entrepreneurship world. They have no idea where to start or anything, like what to do, what the heck they should even be talking to, whatever it is. How can someone get started in the world of entrepreneurship when they have no experience, no connections, and no money?
So at On the Bus, we work with the people that no other coaches want to work with for some reason, and I love them. I love the startups. So somebody with zero revenue, I'll take them. They haven't made any of the mistakes yet, and we get to start with a clean slate. So where you start is with a vision, and the vision should go out to your exit. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sell only, but some people at the end might sell their business. 45 of our owners have sold their businesses. But go out to the exit. So if I'm talking to a 20-year-old, we're probably going out 50 years, something like that. If I'm talking to a 50-year-old, we're probably going out 20 years. But let's go out that 20 years and we start with a meditation and we ask them, where are you at 20 years from now? Where do you live? What do you look like? Who are you married to? What kind of car are you driving? When you pull up to the office, what does that look like? Are you virtual? Is it in your home? Is it a bricks and mortar? When you walk in the door, who's greeting you? Who's there? What's the team look like? How much revenue is it going to take to support that team? What do you hope to be doing then? What are you doing then? And then we look at the org chart for then, and then we start cutting it back to the current day. So that's where how I like to do it, where I like to start, but it starts with a vision. So many owners come to me unhappy with where their company's at because they had no plan, they had no vision. It just grew, it blew up, and they just went where the customers took them, which is fine, but it's hard to adjust later. So start with a vision and join a group that's going to hold you accountable to sticking to your vision.
Well, that was a fantastic response. All right, Chris. The final one. That's also probably one of the most important ones. How does a business, an entrepreneur, some service provider, whoever it is, how can someone identify their target market?
Tough one. So, how do you identify your target market? I guess it depends on your product or service, and you have to determine who do you want to work with and who are your centers of influence that are going to help you get there. So, retail is a whole other answer for this, and I guess restaurants would be too. So, let's take those types. That's a bad answer. How do you establish your target market? Okay, let's start over. Here we go. How do you establish your target market? I think you should know that before you start. Know where the bullseye is before you start plucking arrows. Um, I would know who I'm building a product for or a service for, and I'd ask a lot of questions of that market, those centers of influence, before jumping in. Being a ready fire entrepreneur is a dangerous game, and I see them all the time that they just go, and that can work. But if I have a chance to learn and understand a target market ahead of time, that's a good place to ask a lot of questions.
There you go. And we're finished. See? Look at that. So that's pretty
Well, we'll
much all.
see. We'll see how I did in the end. I was a little cranky prior.
Yeah.
I hope my voice sounded okay. I wonder if we should have changed shirts each time, but whatever. Let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, this is the best part. I figured out a way to make this seamless for clients now. So it's
Should
just,
I stop the recording, by the way?
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.